Do Hard Things Nation, welcome to another episode of the Do Hard Things podcast. I'm your host, Jay Teague, certified high performance coach, transformational mindset coach. And in this episode of the podcast, I have a fantastic conversation with Dr. Amy Skyles. Before we get into today's episode, just a few housekeeping notes. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe so you're notified of future episodes. We got a fantastic lineup of guests and a variety of speakers on a variety of topics coming up, and you don't want to miss out. So hit subscribe. If you haven't done so already, I please just ask that you take a few minutes and go to Apple iTunes, leave a review. They go a long way to expanding the reach of the podcast. We're trying to grow this podcast into, my vision for this is to be a world-class podcast that's, one of the highest ranking out there. I want to get up there with Jocko Willink and Order of Man and some of those other podcasts that made a fantastic impact. And what I think that we're doing that's unique here is we're having real, raw, and relevant conversation with relatable people. And the feedback that I'm getting is the conversation feels authentic. And I think that we're doing something special here. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to be a top-ranked podcast, but I can't do that without your help. And the reviews go a long way. I read all of them, and they go a long way when we're being racked and stacked and people are looking for a certain type of podcast on Apple iTunes when they go in there to search. So do me that favor and please leave a review. And there's no doubt that the conversation today is going to resonate with someone. So take a screenshot, share it with two of your friends, tag me in it. Let me know what your insight was for this podcast. And that's another way that you can support the show and the work that we're doing here. And so I appreciate that. This episode is sponsored by jtiegs.com, JAYTIEGS.com, where I offer one-on-one high-performance coaching. I also offer group high-performance leadership workshops. I've got the Forge Mastermind group where you can connect with a community of like-minded people where I go in weekly and facilitate a conversation or teach a topic on high performance. And when you can connect with other people, you can really accelerate your personal growth and development. I started the speaker series, so we're going to have monthly guest speakers, many of them former guests, to come in and speak on a variety of high-performance topics, special challenges and accountability groups. And, a good way to keep up with everything that's going on is join the newsletter. So if you join the newsletter, I send out a weekly newsletter with the latest happenings in the Do Hard Things Nation community. And I share my top three. It might be a motivational podcast, movie, book, quote I'm pondering, or a tool that I've ran into to make my life better. And so I share that with you to improve your life. And if you haven't done so already, check out the store, the Do Hard Things merchandise store. We got apparel over there, high quality apparel. Show the world that you do hard things. We got t-shirts, hoodies, patches, and we're going to be rolling out all sorts of new merchandise with a variety of different sayings. It doesn't just have to be the Do Hard Things logo. We got Chafing the Dream. We got Ruck Funning. That's one of my favorite shirts, and a few other shirts out there that are new and unique. So we're going to keep rolling things out. What else? If you haven't joined the Do Hard Things Nation Facebook community, I drop a lot of motivation over there. And so that's how you can connect. Just click on the show notes and you can connect with me there. So let me read you Dr. Amy Skyles' bio. Dr. Amy Skyles is a working mother who lives in rural Missouri. She brings humor and live experiences into her writing, providing relatable stories and tips for living your best life. Amy is a self-proclaimed overplanalyzer who loves to learn, and she believes that where you're at now is just a step toward where you can be, both personally and professionally. She believes that planning and setting small goals are essential habits for success. When she's not working, she can be found lounging in her river glamping lot, exercising, or playing with her pups. Accomplishment. Amy's greatest accomplishment is raising two humans to the point where they can do their own laundry. We talk about that in this podcast. Feed themselves and get to work on time. They're adultish and self-sufficient. She doesn't understand why people say they're raising kids. They should be raising adults. So we talk about that in today's podcast as well. Amy managed to defend a dissertation and finish her doctorate in education during the pandemic, and she recently published her first book, Get Back to Work, a guide for navigating your career. Amy and I had met during the Ragnar Bourbon Chase last year. She's a very gritty individual. She's down to earth. I had no idea when I met her. She was just a new member on the team. She was the only member on the team that I didn't really know. And she's so down to earth. And then when I later found out that she's a doctor and she does a lot of great work on LinkedIn. Oftentimes people can be pretentious when they get to that level, but she's a down to earth person. You can sense that, but she's very intelligent, articulate, and is just a great person. And we have a fantastic conversation around a variety of topics in high performance, working from home. We talk about laundry. I had no idea we were going to get into that, but talking about systems and time management and just a variety of excellent topics. And she gives us some insights for her book, which you should go pick up. And we did have some technical difficulties at the initially, so it might sound a little disjointed the first maybe 10 minutes of the podcast. But hey, technology is good until it's not working, and she had to bounce out a couple times, but it does even out. And we get into some great content. So I love the conversation. So without further delay, I'm just going to be quiet. Let's get into today's episode. All right. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Do Our Things podcast. I'm your host, Jay Teague, certified high performance coach, transformational mindset coach. And in the house today, I have the honor and pleasure of having a conversation with Dr. Amy Skyles, also known as Loudmouth. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm doing great.
All right. Tell us a little about who you are and what you do.
So like you said, I'm Amy Skyles. I have spent my career mostly in education, starting as a K-12 educator. And then I moved on to higher ed, eventually moved into a corporate training role, and then started picking up some more experience in general human resources. And very recently, I moved to a human resources position at a local bank. And so now I'm exploring a brand new industry for myself. But I've lived in the same little community of Rolla, Missouri my entire life. I love it here. I never want to leave. And that sort of helped to inspire some of the things in my book as well, that small town, hometown roots and values.
No, it's awesome. We had met during the Ragnar Bourbon Chase. Ragnar is basically it's a team event where we loaded up 12 people, 2 separate vans, and over the course of 200 miles, it's like a relay. So one runner gets out and runs. So basically you have one van of 6 people, basically handing off a baton, running anywhere between 3 to 12 miles. And then the next van picks up, then you kind of leapfrog, and you basically do that until completion. It's a very challenging event, a very difficult event. And you knew Angie, who was our team captain, and we needed another runner. And you're like, you know what, I'm going to jump in with a bunch of people I don't even know and do some hard things. And we got to know you, and we got to meet you there. And I'm like, just talking to you, like gritty, do hard things kind of mindset. And it's been cool. We've connected ever since then. And just watching your work on Facebook, you talk a lot about, facing difficult challenges and all the personal growth and development stuff. And so as a high performing individual, we always like to bring high performing people on the podcast, just kind of pick the brain a little bit. So I'm glad that you're here. Want to talk a little bit more about your book and your mindset and all those things that have led to your success. So thanks for being here.
Yeah. And I'm wearing my Bourbon Chase hoodie from the first Bourbon Chase that I did. That was my second Ragnar. So didn't realize I was going to be on camera when I put this on.
Surprise!
Surprise!
But you're here anyway. We're doing it. So what? Let's just kick it off with that. Why do you do difficult things? Why you tell people you're going to go hop in a van with a bunch of people and do something like that? Like they look at you like you're crazy. So why? Not only did you do it once, but then you jumped on that grenade again with a bunch of people you don't even know. So why do you do that to yourself?
So gosh, there's so many reasons why I torture myself. I think number one is I really like fitness and exercise. And I'm one of those obnoxious people who gets up early in the morning to, that's part of my routine. And it starts my day if I get some exercise in. And running is not something I'm particularly good at, but I like it. I like to be able to go outside and have that change of scenery and push myself and set little goals. And I'm big on setting goals. So if I can push myself just a little bit harder or go a little bit faster one day than I did the day before, that makes me feel a sense of achievement. And so those tiny little goals are things that really help keep pushing me along and make me feel a sense of accomplishment in my own life.
Yeah, that makes you feel good when you do these difficult things and you feel like you win the day, right? So, goal achievement, setting them, executing them, showing up. Yeah, it's good stuff. So, I guess tell us a little bit about your. You started off. What drew you to education? And you initially said you started your career there. What drew you to that?
That's so funny. It was an accident. I started off, my bachelor's degree is in biology. And
Hmm.
if you don't want to leave this small little town in rural Missouri, a bachelor's degree in biology is going to do like zero for you. So I didn't have any options for a job. And one of my sisters was a teacher. And at that time, she was actually at our local junior high, where I ended up after a few years next door to my.
Oh, you froze up again.
Can you hear me? I'm like, I don't know
Got you
what's going on
now.
here. I should be on stable internet. Maybe if I hate to do this, but maybe if I turn off my camera for a minute. I'll turn off my camera and we'll try to go from there.
Okay,
Okay.
gone again.
Um, so where I was at is I got my bachelor's degree in biology and couldn't find a job. And my sister was a teacher, and I thought, well, if Jill can do it, I can do it. And people will learn a lot about my sisters and my relationship with them in my book. They're my absolute best friends. I spend more time with my two sisters who live here in town with me than anyone else. Um, but anyway, so I thought, well, if Jill can do it, I can do it. And so I became a teacher until I could find something else. And it was like a master's degree and a half later. Finally, I moved from K-12 to higher ed. I realized I really liked designing the instruction. I didn't like working with large groups of junior high kids because no matter how interesting you are, they don't really care about science. So, kind of moved in the higher education path from there. And that was, I was much better suited to working with adults in higher education for sure.
Hmm. So you start off biology, and that's a tactical error that a lot of people make very early in their age. You don't know what you're going to do. You got to go get a degree. You got to go off to college. You got to go do something. But there's some degrees that are kind of like they're kind of pitfalls. You do all the work and you get it. And like well, you're very limited. You're still very limited on your options. As would you have selected something different if you could go back, and how would you have tackled that differently? Not
I
saying that that would make any difference or anything,
yeah,
but just wondering out of curiosity.
I don't think so, because I think all of the mistakes that I made and finding out the things that I absolutely hate make me better at what I do now.
I love that because I feel like I have learned almost all of my lessons the hard way, uh, and you learn so much, and it's just getting there and trying things until you figure out who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes when I'm working with younger people who have less workforce experience, they'll they'll be like, "Oh, but I want this and I want this and I want this," and they're very optimistic, which is great. But until you almost until you've become a little bit jaded and you've experienced some things that you just really know what you don't like, you don't know what you want.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to keep trying things. You got to know what you like and know what you don't like, and that's what we've been doing in my group 2022 planning. That was one of the things we talked about. Like, okay, as you analyze your year, you need to determine what you want to do, but you also need to determine what you don't want to do. Like, what do you want to
Yeah.
stop doing and
Yeah.
stop doing those things. So, all right. So you took us around. You pursued a degree in biology, determined that you wanted to be a teacher, get into education. You determined that kids weren't your thing.
Yeah.
And so you got into adult education and you found that to be much more rewarding.
Yeah, designing curriculum and even teaching adult learners is much better. And the environment that I was in, the students were never the problem. And even working with faculty, that was, it was very fun and enlightening working with a lot of people who were PhD scientists and engineers. But the environment at the university where I worked, it was just always everyone was terrified of layoffs, and there were always these budget cuts. And so, even though the job was rewarding and very fulfilling, and I enjoyed it, the stress of the environment was not. And so that's when I decided to start looking for things outside of education, and initially landed as an instructional designer in a corporate role. But then, that was within an HR group, and that's what kind of led down the human resources path.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's unfortunate that sometimes we get involved in organizations where just the culture or just the bureaucracy of it the work is incredibly fulfilling. I think about my time as a recruiter. It was awesome to talk to people about the Army and my experiences, but it was like the nuances of the organization just sucked all the life and fun out of it. And I couldn't wait to get out of there, but I missed the actual engagement with the individuals. I have numerous jobs that are like that. That's unfortunate.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you don't like where you work, it doesn't matter how much, at least in my experience, it doesn't matter how much you like what you do. If the environment is not the right environment for you, you're still not going to be happy.
Absolutely. And that's tough. And it's one of those things you just got to keep trying to find the right organization that align with your goals and values. And that's trial and error.
Yeah. I always wonder, am I just a grass is always greener person? Am I like never going to be satisfied, or, now have I found what I want? And I feel like I keep getting better. The last couple of moves have been better and better and better. But a lot of that has also been career planning and thinking about what it is that I really want now that I know what I don't want, and I've been able to make the plans to figure out which direction I want to go.
Yeah, that's a good point about contentment, right? And I know one of the things I talk about a lot is for many of years of my life, I was very discontent. There's some aspects of my life that I found incredibly fulfilling, but other things are just like chasing new things. And at some point, when do you stop chasing new things and have gratitude and be content? And I find, most of I knew that I wanted to be in the military, and I've served in the last 25 years, but there's just always been like another side of it. Like, man, I love most of what I do, or a lot of what I do, but there's this other side that I absolutely despise. I don't like. And for the first time falling into this work of personal growth and development and coaching and podcasts, for the first time, I have found like legitimate work that feels like play. And I wouldn't have found that had I not kept trying new things and dabbling and falling into this. And as I look back at my life, I'm like, all of those unique experiences I've had in the military have led up to this, positioned me uniquely for this new opportunity, which, it's been awesome to look back at, like, all those experiences, all those trials and errors, those some of the things that I screwed up, have given me the wisdom that I need to be successful where I'm at now.
Yeah. And, that sort of reminds me, you had posted on LinkedIn the other day, the quick video about, making sure, not letting things happen to you, like, plan things out and that sort of thing. And we tend to be like that. Like, we go do something fun and we're like, that was great. I want to do it again. You plan to do it again when it's something fun and rewarding. But when it's work, some people don't have that same mindset of like, well, that part of work was fun or enjoyable or something that I want to do again. Let's see what I can do to plan and set a goal and make sure I'm able to do more of those things that I like. A lot of people they let work happen to them. Yeah. And I'm a big believer that the only things that should happen to you are like tragic accidents, things that are completely outside of your control, but things that you do have some control or influence over. You need to plan those out. And like I said earlier, I'm an overplanalyzer. I had my iPad and my phone and 2 headsets and my computer and all of these things in case, just because I don't ever trust that everything's going to go right. And overplanalyzing helps me, but I'm really good at it. So that's also why I tend to be the person who plans family vacations and those kinds of things. And you don't have to be like me to be able to plan things and not let them just happen to you. You can't just exist in your life. I mean, live it. That's why we've got it.
Yeah, that's why we should do some planning, so we don't, because if you don't plan and have a vision for yourself and execute that, you're going to fall into someone else's. And that's a tactical error that a lot of people have, is they don't have a clear vision for what they want, what they don't want, and they just let life happen. And if you let life happen, just like I think about the game Plinko and the game, like just kind of bing, 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 all the way down. And, you're trying to get to that million, or I don't know, $1 million, whatever, the $10,000 one in the middle, but you end up going to like the $500. Mm-hmm. That's what's going to happen to you if you don't have a vision for yourself. You're just going to ping into things. And so many people are doing that.
Yep, absolutely.
I don't know if that was a great analogy or not, but that was the first thing that popped into my COVID fogged mind this morning. Still dealing with some brain fog there. So you recently read a book or wrote a book, Get Back to Work, a guide for navigating your career. What is the premise of the book?
So it sort of evolved. My good friend Ryan Hammond, who I've never met live face to face, I connected with him through some work circles and a product that we used at one of my former companies. And he was initially a trainer. He has also written a good book called A Passion for Monday. And through my connections with him, every time I would post things and say things about how I was working from home and doing that, he's like, "When are you going to write a book? You need to write a book about this." And finally, I was like, you know what? Ryan is right. I need to write these things down. So I started trying to think about what I wanted to write about. And I always say, and some people think this sounds arrogant, but I'm like, gosh, my life is so easy. Like, it's easy. I think a lot of it is because I plan things and I set my goals. And so I make sure like things aren't just happening. It's not that, I'm just like winning the job lottery or anything. I'm working for it. But because things are easy, I started trying to figure out, okay, what is it that I do that makes them easy? And as I was working from home for almost 2 years, over the last couple of years, I started realizing, working from home is easy for me and, all of these other things. And so I started writing them down, and I started a list on my phone. And every time I would have an idea, I would just add to that list about, well, this is something that I do. And eventually I thought, okay, I have all of these strategies that I use to successfully work from home. And that was what started it, was, a push from Ryan and this drive to help other people who were in that same situation. We're kind of in this messy middle where a lot of people who are working from home have never done it before, and they're just figuring it out. And so I started writing those things down. And initially the plan for the book was to really just be some work from home tips. But it turned into so much more than that, because while I was writing it, I had a realization as I was reevaluating my own career plans that I was sort of stuck where I was at and that I needed to make a change. So the book really became more about not just strategies for working from home, but what our workforce looks like in general now, as we have more people who are working remotely and in hybrid work environments, and how we can continue to work together as a workforce, no matter what industry you're in, and how you can plan for your steps within your own career path in this rapidly changing world of work that we all find ourselves in now.
Yeah, I like what you said earlier. You analyze what's making my life easy, and I'm a big proponent of grit and discipline. You got to do things that challenge you. But really, when you boil it down, like when you're trying to maybe take on a challenge, it's establishing systems and routines that reduce the resistance in your life. And when you have good systems and routines and habits, it does make your life easier. And so that's something I kind of want to hone in on as you said that. And then doing the things that you enjoy. Like, I know when COVID hit and we're doing a lot more teleworking, even in the Army, I've been in the Army for a long time. Like, there's a lot of things that have changed. And being able to work from home, it's like, okay, I have an extra hour in the day now because I don't have to, I don't have to shower if I don't want to, go on the uniform, drive to work,
Yeah.
and then it's like that hour that you'd spend at lunch at work, or somewhere on base. You can spend that at home and get laundry knocked out, or, it feels like you had more time for yourself. And there's definitely some positives to that, but then it's like, there are some negatives and some challenges that do arise too. It's like, especially what people commonly say is like the thought of working at home is great, but then you start missing people and interaction with people. And it's like, then now your work is like associated with your house, because it's like you're always there. It's like, it becomes like a prison. So what were some of the systems, like some of the positives that enabled your success when you started working remotely? And then what were some of the challenges for you?
So I love the systems perspective on this. And I'm a big reader. I read books and I throw out quotes all the time. So I apologize if people get irritated by that. But, I'm like the preacher who's like throwing out Bible quotes all the time. But for me, it's always like self-help, professional development books.
I do the same thing. You're in good company.
James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. He talks about how, you're going to build these tiny little habits. It's just like when I'm running, if I'm like, okay, I got to get back to where, I can run a 10K. First, I got to be able to run 3 miles. Then I got to be able to run that full 5K. And then I got to do it under 30 minutes, and you build those little things. But he says it's your systems that are important. And no matter what goals you have, if you don't have the systems in place to make you successful at those goals, you're not going to reach the goals. So, having a goal to run 5K in under 30 minutes is not going to help if you don't change your systems and actually get off the couch and start running. So for me, my systems are really more related to my motivations and things that excite me. So I am an annoying early morning exerciser, and that morning routine is just one of the systems I have in place so that I do get a workout in every single day. It's easy for me to get up to exercise in the morning. It's not so easy to get up and be like, I'm going to get up and go to work. So that is a system I have in place. That morning routine is really important to me. And I think that I am such a creature of habit that sometimes I maybe take my systems too far, but that's definitely a mindset that I have, is that your systems are huge and important for making sure that you do achieve your goals.
Yeah, in Atomic Habits, he talks about, there's resistance to things, especially when you're not feeling like working out. If you have a system in the morning where you get up and your shoes are right there, your workout attire is right there, you got your water jug on the counter, you know where everything is at, as opposed to you got to get up. Oh shit, I don't want to work out. Where are my shoes?
Yep.
Where's my water bottle? And you're trying to search, like there's so much resistance there. But if you have a routine of setting the stage for success, it enables you to, even when you don't want to work out, like, all right, well, it's like sitting there as a reminder. This is what I do. I got to push through anyway. And even if I put it on and I'm dragging ass down there and I'm still 60%, I still went through the process. But if you don't have that system and, or something happens, like where, part of your morning routine is to get up, and then I don't know, something happens, your kids need your attention. They can't find something. So you got to stop what you're doing and go help them. You kind of get thrown off track, but you default back to your systems when you face this resistance. And I know in that book, he talks about also, if you're trying to break a habit, like say you don't want to watch as much Netflix. Okay. Well, maybe you take the remote control, you take the batteries out and you stick them away from the remote control, because now you've got more resistance to pick up the remote control to turn on the TV. So it goes both ways, but systems make or break you.
Yeah, absolutely. And, my morning routine, I've had to change it significantly a few times over the last couple of years. So like I said, I have this routine, and I would get up when I was going to work. I would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Actually, I think I got up at like 5:02. I don't like even numbers on my alarm clock for some reason. I'm breaking that habit right now. But I would get up at 5 o'clock. I would get ready while I, had a cup of coffee and get my workout clothes that were all laid out, get them on. And when I would get in the car, my phone thought that I was going to Donut King. And every morning it would say, traffic is late, 14 minutes to Donut King. Well, honestly, the gym that I went to at the time was behind Donut King. So I always thought that was hilarious. But that was my routine, as I would have my first cup of coffee at the house while I was getting ready. I'd go to the gym. I'd get my workout. I got done at the exact same time every day, went to work. When I started working from home, I had someone on my team. I started doing daily meetings with my team at first, just to make sure things were, getting done and on track. And someone on my team had a new baby, and it gave him 3 kids under the age of 3. And he was all of a sudden working from home with a newborn that was born like during COVID. So we started meeting at 6:30 in the morning, because that was more convenient for him before kids got up, before there was chaos. And so I had to shift my routine a little bit, and I started working out later. Well, now that I'm working at the office again, I've changed again. I now have a home gym. I don't have to drive to the gym. So, I have my water. I actually have a cup of water, one of these cups of water, like I've got right now, sitting on my nightstand at night. And if I get up with my dogs, I always take a drink of water while I'm up. I grab that cup. It's already ready. It's ice water. It's in a tumbler that stays cold. I grab that. I grab my clothes off the dresser. I drink my first cup of coffee. Then I get to lounge a little bit now before I drink my second cup. And then I head down to my gym, and it saves me that commute time. But it has changed. My system has changed, but the outcome is still the same. I still get a daily workout because I have set that as a priority for myself. I'm not going to just let my day happen to me. My priority first thing in the morning is to always get a workout, and almost always in my workout, I have treadmill time, and that is a time when I get to read. So those are two big priorities for me. When people say, "Oh, I don't have time," it's just not a priority. You can't let life just happen.
I love that you say that, because that is something that I tell people all the time. If you're a member of the Forge, we always say it's not a priority. When you say it's not time, because time is happening. Time is life management. Time is life management. And so if it's not a priority, okay, cool. Then you're just mismanaging your life. If you're fine with binging, I want to preface this by saying there's nothing wrong with scrolling TikTok and social media and watching binging shows, unless you're unhappy with aspects of your life.
Right.
And so if you're not happy with your health and wellness, if you're not happy with your finances, you're not happy with your relationship, okay, well, let's inventory what we're doing with our time. And obviously, if you don't have time to work out, that's a misuse of the word. You're mismanaging your time, because time is there. It's just, okay, what are the other things that you're doing instead of working out? And the thing is, you can destroy yourself in 20 minutes. So what's really going on? Because you can really get a good workout. That's such a bullshit excuse.
Yeah, I agree completely. And the people who say, well, I'm too tired after work. That's why I started going before work, because one, I didn't have time afterward, because, at the time I had little kids when I started working out in the morning. My kids were like, I don't know, like 8 and 5 maybe. And so getting kids ready in the morning was challenging, but my husband and I made an agreement, and I was like, I just need one day a week. And my daughter would show up to school with her hair a mess and wearing mismatched clothes, and she looked like she was in a costume every day. But my sister worked at her school, so she would just pull her aside and brush her hair and make sure she didn't look totally homeless, and that's fine. Nope.
It sounds like my parenting skills as a father when they're with me the dad weeks.
So it's funny because he would say, my husband Brandon would say, I'd be like, did you see what Gracie was wearing when she went to school today? And he's like, no, I was still asleep. I wake up when they say, bye, Dad, and they run out the door. That's my last alarm. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So they were sort of latchkey kids in the morning.
Yeah. No, and that's tough. It's like, where do you spend your time? So what was the outcome? Did he start getting up earlier to help out with that? How did you resolve that issue?
No, my kids learned to take care of themselves. I got to the point after I started going one day a week, I was like, I have to go every single day. It calms me down. I'm kind of hyperactive. It makes me tolerable for my coworkers, but I just needed that time to be able to go do it for myself. And he was totally fine with it. But the kids, they learned to make themselves breakfast. They did all this. And I always say, you should never say I'm raising children or I'm raising kids. You are not raising kids. You are raising adults. So they need to learn to do their own laundry. They need to learn to feed themselves breakfast. They need to learn to do adult things, because you're raising adults. You're not raising kids.
Yeah. Now, teaching our kids to be as self-reliant as possible, as early as possible, is like the fundamental thing that we need to be teaching. And so that's another topic. We could have a whole podcast on that is, when you do a lot for you're doing too much for your kids, what are they learning? You do it. A lot of people do these things as an act of love. Maybe it's an act of service. You're showing love, but if they don't know how to do these basic functions, when they get to the real world, they're not going to be able to function, or they're going to expect that from their partner, who might be like, I am making you a sandwich, so the life skills, right? Teaching them life skills as quickly as possible. Yeah. And what I appreciate is, like, you notice the fact that you got to take care of yourself first. Like, that if you don't get your workout in the morning, I know when I don't, like, I want to throat punch people sometimes. Like, it gets me clear in my head. I'm going to show up better at work for everyone else. I'm clear headed. I feel better. It gives me energy. And that's important. That's taking care of self, so you can be on your A game for everyone else that needs you the rest of the day.
Yeah, that's funny. So I'm a believer that once a child is tall enough to reach the top of the washing machine so that they can turn the dials and open the lid if it's on top, that they should learn to do their own laundry. And if they, end up with all kinds of different colored underwear or whatever, oh, well, they're going to learn better.
They're going to learn. Yeah.
Failures. Yeah. I always say fail fast and fail forward. But my laundry used to be out of control when my kids were little. I would try to keep up with it. And I had someone at my house who said something about it. And I was like, oh, that's why there's a door on the laundry room. So first I closed it. And she even said, well, if you didn't go work out in the morning, maybe you would have time to keep up with your laundry. And I said, well, the fact that I work out every morning makes me healthier, and I will probably live long enough to catch up on my laundry. So that was.
And it's the reason that I'm not throat punching you right now.
Yeah.
I can rein it in a little bit more, because if I didn't get my workout in, I'd be,
yeah.
No, I'm in that process. My kids are 13 now. So that was the thing this year, is like, okay, you guys are doing your own laundry now. I got them their own laundry basket, because me trying to keep up with laundry, just what on the week, we got 1 week on, 1 week off. And the weeks that they're home, boy, I produce enough laundry myself with all the workout gear and everything.
Yeah.
But man, when they're there, it was getting out of control. And, but having a system, one of the best things that I learned as far as creating systems, life skill is, and they do this in Asia, because they got the smaller washing machines. Do your laundry like put a load in the morning when you wake up. Just do one load a day, as opposed to because you got 5 loads. Well, that's going to take you all day to get through your laundry. Yeah. And so if you do 1 load a day, you stay on top of it and getting into that system and routine. And that's been a life changer. And I delegated that stuff out to my kids to do their own laundry. So
the system for that, though, that's really powerful, because at the time when the comment was made that I had too much laundry, my system was everyone just dumps their laundry on the laundry room floor. And there was this mound. It was always at least like 3 feet tall. 4 of us living there, and my husband works outside, and, sometimes he gets dirty. So he'd come home and he'd have 2 outfits a day. And so just tons of sports and those types of uniforms and clothes. There was just always a mound of laundry. And once they were old enough to do their own, and I said, do your own laundry, it was still in a mound. And so we would have to sort through and find our laundry. So it still didn't make sense for everyone to just do their own. It took longer to find your own than it would have if we had something separate. So I got one of those big baker's racks, like a metal baker's rack that has 5 shelves. And for Christmas or my birthday, I think it was my birthday, I asked my husband for 5 matching laundry baskets, 1 for each of us, and then 1 on the top for sheets and towels and things. And I changed my system. And then I was also able to see whose laundry basket was overflowing. And that system is what tamed my laundry, was having a basket for everyone. And I could see, if my daughter hadn't done her laundry, actually, usually it's my husband, I can say, Brandon, go do your laundry. And now everyone just has their own basket there, and my laundry room is clean. I'm not going to say the same for my son's bedroom, but again, that's why God invented doors, so that we can just close the door and you don't have to see his mess. But yeah, those systems are huge.
I didn't expect to be talking about laundry on this episode.
I didn't either.
But I'm actually taking notes here, because I like the idea of the baker shelf. Because I've got this 2-rack system, and one half is mine, and then the other half is the girls. They got so many clothes that the damn thing falls over sometimes. Yep. In my laundry room, I would be embarrassed. If I took you into my laundry room right now, you'd be like, what in the hell is going on here? The baker shelf, 5 shelves.
Yeah, they're perfect size for a laundry basket.
That's the missing link that I need. Thank you.
Welcome. You're welcome.
And I know everyone listening to this, because we talk about a variety of life skills here. It's these little things like this that can save you so much headache in your life. I'm sitting here taking notes on, like, okay, baker's shelf, trying to envision where I'm going to put it. Like, that's awesome. Thank you.
Any problem you have, look at your systems.
It's all about systems, everything. It's everything. Yep. I was listening to Simon Sinek, and he's got a speech on consistency. He was on impact theory with Tom Bilyeu. He's talking about consistency and systems. And it's like, what happens if you brush your teeth in the morning? What's going to happen? Nothing. Nothing's going to happen. And you brush them, over a course of a week. What's going to happen? Nothing. But if you don't brush your teeth for an entire year, what's going to happen? They fall out. You don't notice it when you're doing it. And it's like that when you work out, when you go to the gym in the morning. What happens? Well, you're not losing 5 pounds. Nothing. But if you go over a period of time, you're going to stay fit. But if you stop going, same thing. So I guess all that to say that it's these little things over time that make a big difference. And it's little things that compound, like just go in there and throw your clothes in the laundry pile once a
Mhm.
day. Well, it doesn't take long before you have this big mound of overflowing, and then it becomes like a big hassle in your life. But if you just take care of it every day or have this little system, it can just remove this thing that you're
Yeah,
dealing with in your life,
the
this
big
mound
ass
of dirty
pile of
laundry.
laundry.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's all about the little things.
Yeah.
Well, okay, let's go back to workforce and
Okay.
working and working at home. What are some of the additional positives that you found from working at home? And then we'll talk about the negative aspect of it.
So I think for me, one of the biggest things is that when I'm working, if I'm sitting at my computer, because I do a lot of computer work, um, if it's work where I need to be nose down, working on spreadsheets, looking things up, writing reports, yes, I need to be at a computer. But I always say I have squirrel brain. And if I'm sitting at a computer and I'm not fully engaged, so I'm in a meeting, not like this where we're having a one on one conversation, but I'm in a meeting with 7 or 8 people and I'm not the one presenting. Maybe I don't even need to take notes and I'm really just listening. If I'm sitting at my computer, I'm going to be distracted by my email,
Hmm.
or by something in the background in someone's house. I mean, like they're letting you in their house and you have 7 or 8 different houses that you can explore in your meeting. And I'm totally distracted by all of that. And I know that about myself now.
Hmm.
And so for me, during a time when if I'm working from home, that I am not going to be able to be fully engaged, I am better off not seeing the people's faces, not using a camera, and not being tethered to my computer. So I have a wireless headset and I will dial in through my phone. And by doing that, I can get up and I can unload the dishwasher or fold a load of laundry or just walk up and down my driveway. But doing that actually makes me more engaged than if I'm sitting tethered to my computer because I will be completely distracted by the other things that are happening on that device. So I think that self-awareness is huge, but just knowing that working remotely doesn't mean you have to be sitting in a chair at a desk all day.
Oh my gosh, I'm earmarking that the timestamp on that because I think a lot of people need to hear that. That's so my girlfriend works remote and they have these meetings. There's some days where there's meetings back to back to back, and it's just like I don't like inefficient meetings. Get to the point, get it out there. And you're absolutely right. When you have a big Zoom meeting, because I've been on big Zoom calls, it's like you're just looking at everyone. I'm looking over your
Mhm.
shoulders, see what books on the bookshelf, looking
Yep.
at the photos, or it's like Facebook is up over here, so I'm arguing with somebody about COVID or what, all of these things that are distracting you, keeping you focused. Um, but you're right. Even as I do one-on-one coaching calls, one of the practices, especially for like your first call, they always say, don't use the video. You can actually see more by listening
Mhm.
with what's going on, and it keeps you more focused because this is just another form of potential distraction. And there's some positives about seeing the other person, but I can empathize with the distraction because I've been on meetings and calls where I'm just like, okay, I'm over here scrolling or
Yep.
searching over here, not really paying attention. But if you're up and just listening and you're still doing stuff around the house, not a big proponent of multitasking, but you're still probably more focused than if you are just sitting here like, scrolling through your emails and stuff.
Yeah. Well, there's an entire chapter in my book called it's about turning the camera on. It's can you turn the camera on? Probably not. And that whole chapter was inspired by a blog post that I wrote because I'm not a fan of the camera. I think the amount of face to face, like directly in your line of sight, and how you feel like you have to hold eye contact is weird and uncomfortable and not like a regular conversation. Um, and there are times when I'm like, so if you're in a conference room and you've got a group of people, not everyone is always looking at you. But if you're in a meeting, like even if you're talking, but if you're in a meeting through Zoom or Teams or whatever tool you use, um, someone might be looking at you and you don't even know they're looking at you. So they could be like awkward, weird, staring at you the whole time. And you don't know, you just know they're looking forward. And I just think it's unnatural. And it just irritates me to no end to be in a situation where you have to turn on the camera. You shouldn't feel like you're on stage. And I think women hold themselves to a standard And society does it too. If you've ever shown up to a meeting wearing eyeliner and then you show up to one where you're not, everyone's like, "Oh, are you sick? What's the matter? Do you feel okay?" It's like, "No, I just didn't put my face on today." And
Yeah.
and I think that until we get to a point where we don't hold ourselves to those standards, that it should always be okay for someone to say, "I'm not feeling it today with the camera. Nothing's wrong. I'm working, I'm engaged, but I'm turning it off."
Yeah, and women feel compelled, like they got to get done up, they got to put their makeup on, get their hair done, which is a time-consuming activity, and it's stressful. And
Right.
for what? For what
Yeah.
reason?
Well, and that's why when we started today, I was like, "Oh gosh, I didn't know we were gonna have a camera on." I had my, headband on.
Yeah,
I wear earrings all the time. I'm not wearing earrings because I had on a headband. I at least took a shower this morning, but I'm like, I have on a hoodie. I don't look like me, but you know what? It doesn't matter. It's the things that I have to say are much more important than the way I look. And I think that as long as I'm comfortable and confident enough with what I'm saying, that it really shouldn't matter what I look
yeah.
like. And if I can be wearing a hoodie or I can be wearing a suit with a nice blazer, it doesn't matter.
How do we break that cultural stigma? How do we make it okay for how do we get organizations to be like, let's turn the camera off and not feel the pressure of this? What
Yeah.
advice or how would you recommend we go
I
about that?
don't know how we get society to change. That's like more of an evolutionary thing than a revolution. But I do have one thing that I've adopted as my sort of rule. I call it the 3-person rule. If there are more than 3 people in a meeting, I won't turn on my camera unless someone asks me to turn it on. And even if they ask me, I'm like, nah, not feeling it today. Or, you know, I don't have any makeup on, so I don't want you to see me. I'm perfectly okay with saying that to people. But it's just my 3-camera rule. Anything more than 3, it's a distraction. It's just like if you have up a Word document and your email and Facebook all at the same time, you can't multitask and do that. So more than 3 environments popping up on my screen, it's overload for me, and I know it's going to be more of a distraction than a help. But typically, one-on-one type stuff, I think that's good. I just think companies need to provide some guidelines and be willing to accept that not everyone can always follow 100%.
How do I know if you have your camera off if you're paying attention or if you're engaged with the conversation?
Yeah. So I've had that question throughout the pandemic when I was working from home, actually more about not just people having the camera off, but where they were at, their location. Well, how do I know they're paying attention? And my response to that is that the company I used to work for, we had a lot of people who were also working on site. How do I know they were paying attention? You don't. You don't. You have to trust that they're going to be professionals and that their management is going to lead them and guide them, and they have some sort of outcomes that they're producing something and they're maintaining quotas, and that's not up to you. It's not up to you to be concerned about whether you think they're paying attention. As long as they're doing what you need them to do and whatever their purpose is for being in that meeting, that's what
Yeah.
matters.
I've sat in meetings at work and I've completely zoned out. So whether you're at home with the camera off or on or sitting
Yep.
in a meeting, are you engaged? Are you paying attention? I'll admit that I have been in meetings where I'm like, what? This doesn't even apply to me. And I just completely
Yep.
tune out, right? So I just want to ask that question because that would be the flip side of that. Okay, cool. We can turn off the cameras. That's awesome. But I've also I've led calls. I'm like, do they hear what I just said? I don't
Yeah.
know. But you're right. It's all about, well, if you're here, you're here. I can't control everyone. I'm trusting that you're doing the right thing, that you're getting the information needed to execute. And and setting some expectations and coming to an agreement is helpful.
And you can be transparent without being visible. And what I mean by that is, so I know through my own self-reflection that I am distracted by my computer. So if I have my camera off and I become distracted by my computer and someone asks me a question, instead of trying to muddle through it, I will call myself out and be very transparent and say, "I'm sorry, I was distracted by an email. Could you please repeat that question?" I think it helps people value the fact that, yes, I am trying to pay attention. Yeah, I'm human and sometimes I can be distracted, but I'll call myself out over that sort of behavior because that gives me that reality check as well. And so even though my camera's off, it's not like they're going to say, well, I would hope they wouldn't say, "Oh, well, then why don't you turn on your camera?" They can't tell if I'm distracted by my computer. You know, if I'm looking forward, they don't really know if I'm reading something on Facebook or if I'm listening to them.
Yeah.
But for me personally, I just call myself out, and that helps reset my mind to keep me from doing it again.
Yeah. That just makes that makes a lot of sense. I really appreciate that. I feel it always, when I hear women like, I gotta get all dolled up, I gotta do this for work and the camera. I just like, I appreciate being a guy that the expectations are so low for us, but I kind of like, well, what is that about? Like, why? I just feel bad. I feel bad that they have to spend that amount of time getting ready and prepared. It's unnecessary.
Well, I will tell you the best thing and this totally doesn't apply to you, but maybe one of your listeners will also have a whole lot of long, dark hair that I have realized during the pandemic. There is dry shampoo with dark hair color stuff in it. It's the world's best invention for working women.
So you just put it in your hair and
you spray it.
Spray it in there? Okay.
But
Awesome.
it's typically dry shampoo is for people with lighter hair because it looks like you have powder all over. But for women who need to go to work and they don't want to take an hour to fix their hair and all that stuff, dry shampoo with the dark color stuff in it. That's it. It's the world's best invention ever.
There you go. Another tactical tip you can execute and put in your toolkit there that has no bearing on me or what. Okay. No, that's good stuff.
I didn't know we were going to talk about shampoo and laundry today.
I had no idea. A lot of personal hygiene on this topic today. Personal hygiene with Dr. Amy Skyles. No, this is great. What else? What other compelling nuggets? What can we find in your book that'll be useful?
Oh gosh, there's some really good stuff just about, well, I think it's good stuff. I tell a lot of stories, and they're really stories about my family, because I think that telling things from experience helps people, one, better identify, but two, it makes me seem more authentic. And so I tell a lot of stories, but there's one thing in particular, and I'm at my mom's house right now, so she's probably going to hear me saying this and come stand at the door and eavesdrop. But I tell the story about how her style of management during her career had to be so different from what we have now. And I have always affectionately referred to my mom as social worker Sue. And that was her career. She had one path that, she started working for the state of Missouri, and she worked through that career path that they planned for her. And that was perfectly acceptable during her career. And that was sort of what was expected. And now what we have is we have new industries and new technologies and new things popping up every year. And sometimes even every week, there's something new. And so for employees now and their management to think about how you manage those people who are distracted by something new or might be interested in learning a new career path. You're not going to get people who stay in your field for 30 years. And even if they stay in the field, they're probably not going to stay with one company for 30 years. It's not going to be that 30-year to a pension retirement. And so I think that just having that mindset and adopting that mindset as a culture to recognize it's not a bad thing if people are looking, but making sure that you can keep them engaged and get the best work out of them while you've got them. Maybe they will stay 10 years. But really just shifting the mindset about what a career path looked like in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, when someone planned it for you, versus what it looks like now when you can be looking for something different all the time. And that doesn't mean you're not loyal to your company or to what you do and your colleagues and your peers. It just means that you're looking for yourself first and making sure that what you do, since you are going to spend 30 or 40 years working, is fulfilling, and that it just, really speaks to your soul about what you need to do with your life, because you only get one.
Yeah. The 30 years and getting the golden watch are over. And I know that I've had conversations with people that they were looking to find new employment somewhere else, and they might have had a couple jobs over a couple of years, and people like their parents from the older generation are like, just couldn't understand why they couldn't just stay with the same organization, as if it was a flaw of the individual. Like, you just don't have the commitment or the grit to suffer through this. Like, well, the times have changed. You don't necessarily need to do that. And it's okay. The way the pension plan, I was in the military. I still am, but I'm probably a dinosaur as far as like stay for 20 years, get the pension. The military has even gotten away from that because now they've got the IRA program. Where you get that pension program that you can, it's portable. You can carry it with you somewhere else. So everything is changing in that regards.
Yeah. And it changes so fast. I mean, when I started as an instructional designer, that's not a field that even existed when I was like, in high school and even starting college. So it's a new field, and it became really necessary. And it's not new anymore, but now it's kind of an old dinosaur, but it became necessary as instructors were creating more and more content online. They couldn't be the subject matter expert and the expert at designing their lessons and the expert at how to deliver them online or blended or however. So that role developed. And now you can go to school and actually get a degree in instructional design. But that wasn't something that I had heard of when I was an undergraduate student. And so just recognizing that, thinking, there's another good book, Think Again by Adam Grant, is just thinking again about what it is that you want and not just accepting a path because that's the easy one that's in front of you, and looking at what's available. One of the things that I mention in my book is that, you can start a job for one company in an industry, keep your nose down, and probably work one place for 30 years. But you're not the kind of employee that I would typically want to look for, because you expect things to happen to you instead of going out and making them happen for yourself.
Wow. There you go. There's some advice there. And I love that perspective that even hiring managers may look at that as a negative.
Yeah. I mean, I would be so bored if I had to try to do the same thing for 30 years. It'd just be boring. But two, there's so much out there that I don't know about. If I'm just going to do the same job over and over and over again, what else am I missing?
Yeah. Yeah. Because if you're the time that's typically a go-getter, you're probably going to, like you said, get bored and try to pursue something else. And those are the type of people that I generally like to work with, and just understanding that they may not be with you because they're going to probably look for something else. I mean, obviously, you want to hold on to people as long as you can, probably, because for the continuity's sake, but you can't be mad at them if they want to go pursue something else.
Right.
And take that personally.
I use a lot of exercise analogies. And I remember at one point I was at a job where I said, I felt like when we were all starting, it was kind of a new team. And so they put us all on treadmills. We were all lined up and started us at like 2 miles an hour, no grade. And everyone was slowly trying to, kind of build up, learn what we were doing. And as I got better at things and learned more, I would increase my speed. And then I'd increase more and increase more. And then I'd increase my grade. Well, before long, I was like sprinting uphill so fast, I didn't have time to even look around. And you know how it is. You've been on a treadmill, you jump off, you hold on and you jump off real quick. And sweating, running like crazy. I jump off. I look to my left and I look to my right. And I realize there are people who are still walking at 2 miles an hour. And I think to myself, maybe I want to run outside. Maybe I want to run someplace different and see some other scenery. And that was kind of a way that I started really thinking about my career, is that just because that's the tool that was given to me and I like to run doesn't mean I always want to run on the treadmill. And if I want to go faster and up more hills, but it's not going to get me ahead, then maybe I do need to hop off the treadmill and try something different.
I love that. That's a different shift in perspective. I don't have to just run on the treadmill. I can go run outside.
Yeah. I want real hills.
Yeah. No, I love that. People need to, and that's how you learn things. That's how you grow. That's how you fall into your work that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
I think that's incredibly important.
Yeah. You got to look around.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're approaching an hour. I know we had some technical difficulty in there. Is there? I usually try to, toward the end of the podcast, talk about some high performing habits. But before I shift in there, is there anything else that we need to know about your work or the book that you recently wrote that would be helpful?
Just go get a copy of the book. I'd really appreciate it. Some reviews on Amazon would be fantastic.
We'll link all that into the show notes, so we'll get that out to people. I highly recommend people get their hands on it and then check it out. All right, so as far as high performing habits, you're a high performer. We kind of alluded. I always ask people, like, I'm fascinated with people's morning routine. So what does your morning routine look like? You kind of already elaborated on that, but what is your current morning routine?
So it depends on if it's hair wash day or not. Hair wash day, I got to get up at 5. If it's not hair wash day, I get up at 5:15. But this is my new routine, so I'm still perfecting it. Just been at this new job for 3 weeks and back at the office, getting back to work. And so I get up at around 5ish. I sit on the couch with at least one dog on my lap, sometimes 2 or 3, and drink coffee. I have 2 cups of coffee, and my workout clothes are all laid out. As soon as I'm done with my second cup of coffee, I change my clothes. I grab my water that is already sitting next to my clothes on my nightstand. Hit the gym for anywhere from 40 to 50 minutes, depending on how I'm feeling and how much time I've got. And it's, gym in my basement, so that makes it easy. Some days are really high intensity. If it's hair wash day, I make sure it's high intensity. That's just one of my little systems. If I'm gonna make myself, really get sweaty, then I feel like I deserve to wash my hair. It's been a whole lot of weird hygiene stuff. But after that, then, take a shower every morning for breakfast. Almost without fail now, I eat a half a piece of wheat toast with a fried egg on top. And that's the last thing I do. And I finish drinking my water with it. Last thing I do before I leave the house. And the only reason it's a half a piece is because I buy the great big kind that has like the nuts and seeds on it. And so it's just kind of a big piece of toast. So anyway, I have a piece of wheat toast with a fried egg on top, refill my water, and head out the door.
Awesome. So working out, personal hygiene, working out, getting some nutrition in there, all those things are important systematically. So like you said earlier, you feel fresh, you feel clear of mind, recharged, ready to take on the day. And I'm fascinated with people's morning routine. But as I have interviewed almost everyone on this podcast, they don't just simply wake up, no one's ever said I wake up and hit the snooze button 5 times and I immediately finally get up and I just go to work and check my email and watch the news. No one has ever said that. I get up, I eat a healthy meal, I move the body, I put something positive in my mind, and it gives me the framework I need, the bookending the day to start off in that fighter stance. So I love it.
So I wonder how many people who you've interviewed for this also don't really need an alarm clock. That would be a good question to ask them. So I use one because I'm an overplanalyzer and it freaks me out. And if I oversleep, it makes my morning rushed and it ruins my whole day. Feels rushed.
Yeah.
So I do use one, but even if I didn't use one, I would wake up in time to probably have at least a 20-minute workout and not ruin my day. So I'm curious how many high performing people just wake up.
Yeah, I think most do. That's usually a question I ask people. That's also an indicator if you're getting enough sleep or not. Because usually, if you're waking up every day to an alarm, you're probably not getting enough sleep.
Right.
Biologically, I think your circadian rhythm, you start to get used to just waking up and getting into that routine as well.
Yeah.
Even on the days that you're tired. So I usually wake up before my alarm. Usually it's weird, like 10, 15 minutes before I'll wake up.
Yeah. What I don't like is when I wake up like 1 minute before and I can't get to it and turn it off before it goes off.
Yeah.
That irritates me for some reason. But if I wake up 15 minutes early, no problem. But if I wake up 1 minute early and I just don't get to it and it still goes off, then I'm bothered by that.
And I know that I'm not getting enough rest because there's mornings where the alarm does go off and I'm in I remember the dream, like I was in mid-dream, because that means you're in deep REM sleep.
Yeah.
Okay, that means I'm way off. I need some sleep. I need some rest.
Yep. Yeah. So, I'm a 9 p.m. kind of person. I actually have a pillow that I just bought in my living room. It's on a little chair in the corner that says, "Welcome to our home. Please leave by 9 p.m."
Nice.
Bedtime.
I set an alarm to bedtime routine at 9, but I don't get into bed till probably 10, but I probably need to bump that up. I probably need an extra hour of sleep. It's something I need to work on.
So question with that.
Yeah.
Do you have a TV in your bedroom?
I do not. I took that out years ago.
I've never had one.
Yeah, that's I used to, and I would end up staying too late watching it. I'd fall asleep with it on, and that light, I guess, messes up. It's hard to get into that deep sleep. And so, the bedroom is for sleeping and and love. So you shouldn't be watching TV in our living room floor. So yeah, but that's a little tactical life tip that I tell people. If you got a bedroom or a TV in your bedroom, it's costing you sleep, and it's not a good habit.
Even bright clocks. My clock is too bright. Sometimes I cover it up.
Yeah, I guess apparently if you have little lights or you got like little LEDs from your electronic devices in there, it can mess up your sleep. So you're supposed to try to get everything as blacked out as possible.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. What book have you gifted the most, or what are the top 3 books that have impacted your life the most?
Okay. I think the number one, I was really glad you gave me this question in advance because it's really hard to come up with 3. The number one absolutely is Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott. It is a fantastic book that helps you learn how, when you have that feeling like, eek, I should say something about this, whatever it may be. She gives really good tips for how to say it without leaving an emotional wake. And that's the big thing. If you need to say something and you've waited so long that you blow up, you're going to leave a negative wake behind you. So Fierce Conversations, I would say by far is number one. There's an author, Bruce Tolgan, who I also have read, I think, almost everything he's ever written. And I follow him pretty closely on LinkedIn as well. And the first book I read from him was It's Okay to Manage Your Boss. And it got me in a whole lot of trouble. Actually was part of the inspiration for leaving a very toxic work culture. But he's got a bunch of other good ones as well. And then I would say Atomic Habits by James Clear is probably my number 3. I've got so many others though. There's a book by Andy Storch called Own Your Career, Own Your Life. When I read that one about a year ago, I sent him a message on LinkedIn, didn't know him, had never met him. And I was like, I'd just like you to know the very first sentence of your book just totally took my idea for a whole book. And he responded and we've met. And so it's been great, but
that's awesome.
I just love to read, but I would say that the top 3 are Fierce Conversations, Atomic Habits, and It's Okay to Manage Your Boss.
Those are great. I have read Atomic Habits. I've not read the other 2, but the Fierce Conversation, that's interesting. I was recording a podcast this morning with Nick Maytash. We're talking about, he's an emotional coach, and we're talking about like managing your emotions, having the conversations, when you blow up, like you've let things boil over, and that's not good. And oftentimes we don't want to have those tough conversations and they fester, and it's not good to do that. So and you're right about the leaving the emotional wake behind. So I'm going to pick that one up.
Yeah. The same goes for It's Okay to Manage Your Boss. It is absolutely not about managing your boss. 100% of that is managing yourself. All of it. Now, there's also It's Okay to Be the Boss is the one that he wrote first. But at the time when I first read It's Okay to Manage Your Boss, I was not in a leadership role at that time, and I was really struggling, and that's why I read it. But it's a good read. It's really just about self-management and managing yourself so that your boss doesn't have to manage you.
I like that. I think about when you said that, I was thinking about Jocko talks about like leading up the chain of command and how you can influence up the chain of command, but it's not about that. This is more of like just being a better employee, like understanding what your boss's expectations are and coming to agreements and executing those. Is that?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. All right. Well, we'll make sure we get those in the show notes. One of the questions I have: how do you spend intentional time with your husband or your kids? What routines do you have for that?
So I wrote a really good section in my book about this. There was one morning this past September, and it was when I had first started writing the book. It took me about 4 months to write it. And I was sitting on the couch or in my recliner. I always say on the couch, but I sit in a recliner in the morning, drink my coffee, and I was working from home at the time in my red fuzzy bathrobe. And I vaguely remembered about 9 o'clock, I vaguely remembered everyone saying bye and walking out the door. But all of a sudden I realized I was alone, and I didn't I didn't remember that with intentionality. Like I just like, okay, whatever, bye, see you. You know, they walked out and I was all by myself. And I thought, what if something happens to one of them today? I don't know. I don't know what they were wearing. I don't know. You know, I didn't interact with them. I was here, but I was not present with them. I was present with my computer. And which is funny for someone who gets so distracted by their computer that they don't pay attention to meetings that, you know, I couldn't pay attention to the real live people either. So that day I actually wrote a LinkedIn post and said that I felt like instead of working from home, I was living at work. And my friend Ryan, after I posted that, said, that's when he said, you've got to write a book about this. And he's like, I think you found the title right there. But the next day I was very intentional. And when everyone was up and about moving around, I made sure that I talked with every single one of them. I wrote in the book about what my son was wearing that day, about my daughter, how she had perfectly straightened her hair. I just remembered interacting very intentionally with every one of them that in that moment the next day, because just being home did not make me more present than when I was getting up and, you know, going to the gym in the mornings and my kids were showing up at school with their hair a mess. Just physically being somewhere and existing does not mean you're present. And so I've tried to really reframe my mind. And I think now that I'm back at work, just a few months later, my time when I'm coming home and being with them, I'm trying to make it more intentional. I'm not doing work all the time. When I was working from home, it was really hard to stop. And so it was just a habit. It was a bad habit to work from 6 a.m. until it was time to go to bed, because that was just part of the day. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to be much more intentional now.
Got to set some boundaries. And I've talked about that a lot. We often live in close proximity with one another, but we're not engaged. And that's a good indicator. If you're listening to this and you don't know what your kids are wearing today, then you need to slow down and live with more intentionality. And that's one of the things that I've learned from Brendan Bouchard. He talks about we need to feel the day more, and we're missing out on these little moments that can lead to our happiness. It's like when the kids run off to school, like stopping for a moment and giving them like a hug and telling them like, hey, I'm proud of you. I love you. Look at them, engage with them for a second. Just a minute or two. It's going to make you feel happier. You're connected with the kids. Then you go out about work. But oftentimes we're so consumed and distracted. It's like, okay, they're running out the door. Yeah, I'll see you tonight. You're like, and you're not feeling the day when you do that. And over time, that adds up to just a further disconnection. And then you ultimately leads to misery. And so that's an excellent point, is slowing down a little bit, being more intentional with those small moments throughout the day.
And like, you've got girls, so this resonates with you. I'm sure my teenage daughter, she just turned 17 this week. They interact so much online. She has probably made 8 TikTok videos and Snapchatted, I don't know, 400 kids by the time she leaves the house in the morning. So she has had all of these other interactions. There is no telling how many times she may have run by me during that time, feeling like maybe she was bullied online. Hopefully she didn't bully somebody else online, but something had already happened to her because of some of those interactions throughout the day. And maybe she was upset, and maybe she kind of ran by with tears in her eyes and said, "Bye, Mom." If I don't make an effort and take the time to stop and look at her, I may not pick up on something like that. And I think as a parent, if you're working from home, especially with the pressures that are on all kids, but girls in particular, I think just making that time to be very intentional is really important. Just to, at the very least, make eye contact with your kid. Make sure, because you can see it in their faces. Make sure they're okay.
Something that I had a conversation. I've recorded 2 podcasts today. So I was thinking about Nick. That's because I recorded with him earlier today. And so my morning routine on the week that I got my kids is I'll wake up in the morning. The kids we get up about the same time. The kids are in the shower. I get up, start my routine, and I'm working out downstairs till it's about 15 minutes to go. And then I'm kind of rushing off and get the kids. I drive them to school. They used to ride the bus. I'm like, I got time to take them to school. And it's in that drive to school where I'm, have a little conversation with them. But one thing that Nick does, and I didn't even consider this, like I try to have intentional dinner. It doesn't happen as often as I'd like, but he has intentional breakfast with the family. And I'm like, you know what? If I just got up a half hour earlier, I could make breakfast for the kids and we could sit around the table before we went off to school and have that intentional moment at the beginning of the day, and then maybe again in the evening.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that like all morning after our call. Like that's something that I could do to be a little bit more intentional, because my kids they're going to be out of the house here in a couple of years. They're going to get driver's license. They're going to be gone.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm looking at ways like, how can I be more intentional while I have them? Because I'm looking at like, no, they turned 14 and I'm like, I don't have that much. Like, I can't believe they're 14. They're not going to be here much longer. How can I get those moments of intentionality with them? So it's just one thing I was thinking about. Like, how can I be intentional in the morning? Well, if I just got my lazy ass up 30 minutes earlier and got after it. So I don't know. That's what was, but being intentional. Yeah. Finding moments to be intentional. So
absolutely.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Well, is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we wrap this thing up?
One thing. So, and I wrote about this in my book too. When I meet new people, I like to talk about superpowers. Some people just call them strengths, which I think is boring, because your strengths are really things that set you apart. And if I could have a true superpower, I would fly. I used to have dreams that I could fly. It was amazing. My sister and I had a conversation about this the other day, because she was like, I didn't know that. I had those dreams too. I mean, you'd just like flap your little arms and you'd fly. So if I had a real superpower, it would be flight. But since I don't have a real superpower, I focus on the things that just set me apart. So my superpowers are intrinsic motivation and time management. They're the things that people just recognize about me. They're like, gosh, how is it that you never drop the ball on, these projects and things? I'm like, oh, it's my time management. And I'm intrinsically motivated to make sure that I, stay on task. So what would you say is your number one or top two superpowers?
My superpowers. I am good at influencing people to take action. And this is one thing, I don't really know how I do it. I just have that ability. People just take action. And I think that's, it served me well in the military. It's serving me well now as a coach. And it's important to lean in on your strengths. I think so many people focus up on trying to shore up your weaknesses, but one of the things that they teach in high performance habits is identifying your strengths and busting through. And then being just being gritty and consistent, persistent, pushing through when you don't want to. And I think that, I don't know how you would define that as a superpower, whether it's persistence or just having grit. But when things get tough, you keep plodding on, and it served me well throughout my life. And it's something that a lot of people wish they had more of. And so I guess if I could nail it down, those would be my two.
Yeah, grit is fantastic. And I know we've had a conversation about that before. And until my book came out, I actually just recently, I had the definition of grit on my LinkedIn banner. And that was what it was, my little picture and then the word grit with the definition. And before that I had grow your grit and I had, some other things, but my
friend, he was on my podcast, David Fivecoat, wrote a book called Grow Your Grit. And what I love about that book is he's kind of the book by Angela Duckworth, Grit, very theoretical. The one thing that she talks about in there that you could actually apply is they got the Do Hard Things challenge, where every member in her family is taking on a new challenge. They're playing an instrument, a sport, learning something new. David, who's a colonel in the Army, he's lived a life of grit, and he talks about his deployment. And then he talks about he'll preface the chapter with maybe an NFL player or someone and talk about how gritty they were. But then he gives you actionable things that you can put into your life to develop grit, because I truly believe it doesn't matter how much talent you have, how much resources you have. If you have grit, you can outwork people that have more than you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it served me well, because I am not an intellectual. It took me 10 years to get my bachelor degree. I tell people, I joke that I just didn't stop. I didn't have this. I just kept going. And by doing so, I never quit. And it paid off well for me. I have to work harder than the average bear, but I won't stop. And that's yielded my success.
Yep.
And then most people will quit early. They quit too soon.
Yeah. I can't stand half finished stuff, no matter what it is. And I think a big part of being gritty is also making sure that you finish one thing before you start the next. So, even if it's going to take you longer, finishing before you start the next thing, because once you've abandoned one project or idea or goal, it's going to become much easier to abandon the next time around when things get tough. And if things get tough and you can't try to push through, you're not going to grow. It's just like exercise. If you don't sweat, you're not going to build muscles. You know, you're not going to build up your endurance. So
yeah, that would be one of over the years, probably one of my weaknesses. Now I'm really good at starting challenges and doing things like that. But when it comes to like projects, sometimes at work, I'm really good at starting, but I'll leave some loose ends open and I'll start the next project. That is one area that I've really tried to focus on, and I've gotten better at that. And I think that happens to a lot of high performing people. They'll want to do all the things.
yeah.
And then they kind of get bored, or they have a new idea and they're excited about jumping on to the next thing, but they don't quite close out that project. And if they button that thing up and not left all the crumbs there, like, they'd have a better outcome.
Yeah. Yeah, I do see that.
Yeah.
Finish it, but finish it well.
finish well, finish strong. So, and that's one thing I always send a message to my team on Fridays is finish Friday. Don't leave any breadcrumbs.
Oh, yeah.
Close out the week while everyone's thinking about the weekend and having conversations about their NFL team around the water cooler. Like, what's that one extra rep that you could do at work? Like, what if you spent 30 minutes either on a work project or, more importantly, a project for yourself? You know, over time, that is where you can really gain some traction. And so finish Friday is what I talk about all the time. So
Yeah, that's great. I like it.
well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast today. I appreciate you. I know we had some technical issues up front, but I think we got it. We went to a whole gamut of stuff. We talked about personal hygiene and laundry. I took some notes about that, and then we kind of went full circle. So appreciate you being here.
I'm just glad I could help you with your laundry.
That was huge. Like, getting a baker's rack. That's going to solve a problem. And I know that I'm not the only one, because I know Lacey here, my girlfriend, I'm at her house today. She has laundry issues. Like, it's something that comes up from time to time, and it's good to share our knowledge, because it's these little things like that can really make your life a hell of a lot easier. Create those systems.
And with that, the funniest part, when I asked my husband for the laundry baskets for my birthday, so my birthday's in February, it's actually coming up in a couple weeks, and he was like, is this some sort of trick or a test? Am I supposed to really buy you laundry baskets? So he knows I also love Cadbury eggs, and they usually come out for Easter, like February, right? Which is way early, but I love it. So I ended up with my matching laundry baskets, and one of them was like half full of Cadbury eggs. That was
good man, smart man.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Amy, for being here. I'm looking forward to our next Ragnar, or suffering in some kind of endurance event. How can people get in contact with you?
So LinkedIn is a really great way to just kind of follow what I'm doing. Look for Amy Skyles, S for Susan, kind of like my mom, social worker Sue. But I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I also have a website. So Jay, if you could share the link to my website so people could follow my blog as well, that would be helpful. And, there's contact information there, and feel free to reach out through LinkedIn. And I'm happy to connect.
No, absolutely. We'll put all that contact information in the show notes, and we'll link your book, Get Back to Work, A Guide for Navigating Your Career, and anything else that you'd like to, your blog and everything else, and put that in the show notes. So connect with Amy, follow her. She puts out a lot of great content on LinkedIn. She's a high-performing individual who's getting after it and adding a lot of value. So keep tabs with what she's doing. So thank you so much, Dr. Amy Skyles, for being here today, and appreciate you.
All right. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you for listening to today's podcast and conversation with Dr. Amy Skyles. If you like the podcast, please subscribe so you're notified of future episodes, and please leave a review. They go a long way to expanding the podcast. I'd also love to know your thoughts. There's no doubt that the message today could help someone out. So take a screenshot, share it with 2 of your friends, tag me on social media, and let me know what insight that you gained. I love that question. Every time someone says they recommend a book or a podcast, I always ask, what insight did you take away from that? There's usually like 1 or 2 like golden nuggets that you got. And I'd love to hear what you got from today's podcast and conversation. You can connect with Amy and pick up her book. All of those links are in the show notes. You can also connect with me. All of my social media links are in the show notes as well. And if you're ready to take your personal growth and development to the next level, you can apply for coaching at jteagues.com, where you can hire me as your coach. And I say hire me, but really it's more like investing in yourself. And when you invest in yourself, whether it be in a mastermind group or one-on-one coaching, you're going to gain that extra perspective that you can't necessarily see on your own. And it's fundamentally transformed my life to a point. I believe in it so much that I became a coach myself. And you can get involved in the community. We have the Do Hard Things Nation Facebook page. We have the Forge Mastermind community. We're going to be doing workshops and challenges. And if you want to know what's going on, the latest happenings, join the Do Hard Things newsletter. You can go over to jteagues.com, jaytiegs.com, get signed up, or you can click in the show notes, and there's a bunch of links in there that you can connect with me if you have any questions. So thank you for listening. In the meantime, keep doing hard things. We will see you guys in the next episode.